Здравствуйте, welcome back to Russian Through Poems and Paintings. Today is day 134, and again, continuing just talking about feelings and reviewing some grammar. So, today, really useful bit of grammar, comparatives, right? Basic comparative forms, which we can use all the time to tell how we feel about things, to give our opinions, right? To say what we prefer, right? Something's better or worse or more interesting, and so forth. Right? Our painting today is called Обед работников, right? The dinner, the meal of the workers. We see some peasants here with their lapti, right? Their shoes, bast shoes there, um, eating, right? Где лучше, интереснее жить? В городе или в деревне? Where is it better and more interesting to live? In a city or in the village? Что тебе больше нравится? Работать руками или головой? What pleases you more, right? What do you like better? To work with your hands or with your head? Okay, so our comparatives here are лучше and интереснее, right? Better and more interesting. And then another one we have here, больше, right? More. What pleases you more? What do you like more? Что тебе больше нравится? Okay, so how do we form these comparatives? Well, regular comparatives, we typically take the whatever the adjective is and substitute in place of the adjectival ending the comparative ending yeah, yeah, which very often is stressed for comparatives with two syllables or fewer, right? So silny, slabby, длинный, we expect to get stressed yeah, yeah, as in сильнее, слабее, длиннее. Now, if it's more than three syllables, then the stress usually won't shift. It won't shift to the ending, although every once in a while it does. So красивый becomes красивее, медленный becomes медленнее, холодный becomes холоднее, right? So the third one is an exception with the stress jumping. So let's try to form a few of these. And again, these are just regular adjectives. We would expect as a general rule that they will follow this very simple pattern for forming comparatives. So важный, meaning important, more important would be важнее, важнее, right, with the stress shifting to the ending. Удобный, удобнее, right, three syllables, удобнее, no stress shift. Быстрый, быстрее, right, two syllables, shifting stress. Длинный, длиннее, right, which means longer. Right, by the way, I forgot to give the meanings of these. Hopefully we know them already. Удобнее would mean more convenient or more comfortable. Быстрее would mean more fast, quicker. Длинный, faster. Длинный would be длиннее, right, longer. Трудный, the comparative meaning more difficult, would be труднее. Необычный, unusual, okay, more than two syllables, so no shifting stress. Необычнее, необычнее, more unusual. Скучный, two syllables, so more boring would be скучнее, скучнее. Серьезный, more serious would be серьезнее. Темный, watch the two syllables, that's going to be темнее. Шумный, number 9 means dark, right? So темнее is darker. Number 10, шумный, meaning loud or noisy. Noisier would be шумнее. Умный, meaning smart. The comparative would be умнее. And свежий, meaning fresh. Fresher would be свежее. Свежее. Okay, now, as we should know, if you remember, not all adjectives form their comparatives in this regular fashion, right? Some of them involve mutations. And unfortunately, that's often the case for some of the most basic, most common adjectives. Let's take a look just at a few here. There are others. But basically, one way to look at this is that a lot of these adjectives don't end in that ny adjectival suffix, right? If we look over the adjectives on 178, right, I think almost all of them, except for свежий, end in this ny suffix, right? So if you see ny, you can be pretty confident that it's going to form its comparative in yeah, yeah, right? I'm not sure there are any exceptions to that. Of course, there are others that don't end in the, we saw over there, like slably, right? But there, again, there are a lot of very common ones that don't end in the, and we can expect those to do something funny, right? If a mutation is possible, right? That is, if their stem ends in a g or a ka or a ch and so forth, then we get a mutation, the same mutations we used with vowels, right? Verbs. So here are a few examples, just typical examples. Dragoi becomes darozhe. Niski becomes nija. And that leads us to one other little detail here that we discussed before, right, when we first introduced this stuff, I think in book 2, that often we have to ignore a final key, well, or basically just the ka, right? So we're getting rid of the adjectival ending, of course. Then we're ignoring the ka if there's one there. And that would leave us with knees, right? And then if we get the mutation, right, then we get what we need, which is nija, right? So it's as if that ka simply has been discarded. Yeah, next one, tihi, right? We get the ch to sh mutation. We get tish, quieter. Now some other mutations, bagati, te mutates to ch. We get bagatche. Okay, easy, lyochki, we get liekche, and there the K is actually mutating, obviously. So there, you see a K, it can sometimes be a bit unpredictable, right? Basically, if we go back to Niski, I think originally that there was an S there, ski, right? If you think about the two major Russian adjectival suffixes, right? We have ny, which we talked about on page 178, and then ski, which we see in adjectives like ruski. And it's that we're getting rid of in an adjective like niski. And so we're ignoring the ka, we're getting the mutation to nija. But on lyochki, the ka is not being discarded, it's mutating. And that leaves us with liekche, right? So that can be a little bit strange. We'll look at for more examples here in a moment, right? It can be unpredictable, right? Sometimes the ka will just be discarded, other times it will show the mutation. Finally, a cluster mutation, right? Este mutates to sh, right? So we get prastoy. Its comparative is prosh. Okay, so let's form a few of these, and I think these are fairly easy. Maladoy, maloja, right? Maybe you remember some of these from last year, hopefully, from the previous book. Maloja means younger. Number 2, harder would be tviorja, right? Getting the mutation. Number 3, gromki. Okay, now that's just, that's not the ski suffix, right? So ka is going to be retained here and it's going to mutate and we get gromche. Number 4, vysoki. Okay, here we didn't mention this particular variation, but oki is also typically ignored, again, for purposes of forming the comparatives. So we get vysh, right? It's as if that oki were never even there. And we go from vys to vysh. Myachki. Okay, here we do retain the ka and we get myakche. Shest, karotki. Okay, here we ignore the ka. So again, you see this is just not always predictable. This is going to be karoche, which means shorter. Number 7, uski. We ignore the ka and we get uja, meaning more narrow. 8, bliski. So the comparative meaning closer. We ignore the ka, we get blizha. 9, частый, which means frequent. You don't see this very often as an adjective, but it's comparative. You hear all the time, right? Чаще, meaning more often. Жаркий, we keep the ka, we get жарче. Strogi, by the way, 10, жарче means hotter. Strogi, which means strict or stern. More strict would be strože. And number 12, žestoki, that's gonna be žestoče, which means more cruel. Okay, so some discussion stuff there in the book, but we'll leave that aside for present purposes and go on to 180. Irregular comparatives. Okay, so these are definitely worth reviewing if you don't remember them. We have covered them before in theory, I think. I think all of these have been in, I think they were in book 2, right? So some comparatives simply have to be, they have to be memorized. There's no predicting them. Some of these are suppletives. So, for example, plachoi becomes chuja, writing clearly those are from different roots. They really have nothing to do with each other. Some others, like pozdny, we get pozha, and the z usually is not really pronounced. We can think of that as the de mutating to a zh, right? So some of these we can sort of predict. And we see if we look across the whole list here that a lot of them are ending in sh, right? Balshoi, bolsh, dalyoki, dalsh, rani, ransh, stari, starsh, dolgi, dolsh, right? And then, of course, we have several in zh, right? So if you note those similarities, it may be easy to remember these. But again, we really have no choice but simply to memorize these. And since all of these are fairly common, then they're all very well worth memorizing. So let's practice this just by comparing a few things here, right? So take the basic form of the adjective in bold and then fill in the blank with the comparative to make a comparison. So Fet is a good poet, but Pushkin is even better. Fet хороший поэт, а Pushkin еще лучше. Right, so Fet is no slouch, but I think everyone would agree that, including Fet himself, that Pushkin was the better poet. So Pushkin еще лучше. Okay, Москва далеко, а Vladivostok еще дальше. Right, so Moscow is far away, but Vladivostok is even further away. Я пришел на урок поздно, а они еще позже. Right, they came even later. Right, I came to class late, they came even later, позже. Let's see, I have a small apartment, but theirs is even smaller. У нас маленькая квартира, а у них еще меньше. 5. Моя собака старая, а твоя еще старше. Right, so I have an old dog, yours is even older. 6. Студенты встают рано, а профессора еще раньше. The students get up early, the professors even earlier. 7. США большая страна, а Россия еще больше. Right, the US is a large country, but Russia is even bigger. 8. Я плохо понимаю по-русски, а говорю еще хуже. Right, I understand Russian badly, but I speak even worse. Okay, 2 ways of making comparisons very quickly. This again is review, right? We can follow a comparative form with either the genitive, right, a noun in the genitive, or we can insert chim, which is sort of like in English than, right, and simply follow that with the nominative, right? So for example, the question, что вкуснее, вино или сок? Okay, and let's give an opinion, right? Vino vkusnее soka. Wine is tastier than juice, we're saying in English. In Russian, again, we can say either simply vino vkusnее soka, just using the genitive, or vkusnее чем sok, nominative, right? It's tastier than juice. Okay, so you could give a few opinions there in the book based on those two models. Again, pretty simple grammar there, especially at this point, right? We should be very comfortable with this, and now the point is really just to practice it a little bit and use these constructions to express our own ideas. One final note on 181, the more, ... the more, ... Okay, so this could stand in for, this little formula would work with any two comparatives. For, like in English, for example, the more the better, right? Or the faster the better, or something like that, right? Any two comparatives. In Russian, of course, we use two comparatives, just like in English, and we combine those with чем, тем, right? For example, чем больше, тем лучше, the more, the better, or the earlier, the better, чем раньше, тем лучше, right? So that's again, a pretty simple construction, Now, in today's poem on 181, right, the Pushkin, we have that type of idea, chim. You see the poem opens with chim, and then we get a series of tim, tim, tim. So I'll make a separate video on that at some point and read the poem and analyze those constructions a bit more closely. Okay, so that's it for today. Just a quick review of comparatives. And so practice some of these and practice formulating your own opinions using comparatives. And next time we'll talk more about comparatives used as adverbs, right? Keep in mind that these forms we've made today, we were forming them from adjectives, but the forms, the comparative adjectives will also function as adverbs, right? They could be the comparative forms of adverbs as well. So we'll talk more about that on day 135. Until then, до свидания.